Hi, my name is Elman Ainsworth. I'm with Narrative Conisby. We're hosting this new series called Lead the Way. We felt that there's a lot of opinions, forecasts, and projections in the market now more than ever before. But people know less now than they've ever known before. They don't know what's actually happening and what the future is even going to look like. Landlords are shifting their mindsets from growth to retention. Retailers are shifting from expansion to strategic closing. Developers and builders are grappling with the latest lockdown laws in Melbourne on top of all their existing challenges. But is it all so bad? Are there any opportunities? Major wealth and expansion have been achieved throughout history whenever there was a crisis. In the series of Lead the Way, you'll be hearing from Australia's top business leaders on how they're personally handling themselves in this market, their mistakes, fears, regrets, but also their successes, opportunities, and positive outlooks. The objective is to instill confidence, ideas, and inspiration into the market.
So today, Zelman and I are really lucky to have Tim Gurner on the show. And again, everyone I'm sure knows Tim very well, but as an introduction, he founded his development company, Gurner, in 2013. The company now is the preeminent luxury apartment developer in Australia. The achievements of Tim and his company are impressive, so I'm just going to reel off a few. Thousands of apartments completed, inclusion in the AFR Rich list, lots of iconic projects, and I think really importantly, which I think a lot of people know Tim for, is a real high regard for quality, so a real focus on quality. So Tim, I'm going to first say thanks for coming on the show. It's just so good to have you on here. Starting with a bit of a question around celebrity, because you are quoted a lot in the media. Your comments on the market, comments on the political play at the moment. So has that helped you sell apartments? Has it helped? Has your reputation helped you with your business?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me, both of you. Great to be here. And I think celebrity in the press, I think behind you, Narrator, I'm a long way behind you, that's for sure, in terms of quotes. But look, I think the problem for me, it's not that I like to be controversial or like to be out there, but if someone asks me a question, I'm not good at lying. So I am very black and white. I give people my opinion on what I think. I'm not political in any way whatsoever. I'll give my opinion on a Liberal or a Labor government, and unfortunately right now I don't agree with what's happening. It's just purely that it is a Labor government, nothing political though in any way whatsoever. Has it helped the brand? I don't think my commentary around the market helps the brand selling apartments, definitely not. That's just a personal decision. I think that we all have obligations as business leaders to provide insights to what's happening on the ground, and I think right now, I mean, as much as Dan Andrews, you like him or you hate him, I mean, it's incredibly difficult with what these guys are dealing with. And I think we all have a duty, as you guys do and all business leaders do, to give feedback to what's happening at the coalface and, give them, real market evidence as to what we're seeing on the ground, because it's very difficult for them to sit there not running businesses and be able to provide input into what's actually happening.
Tim, there's whispers in the market that are unconfirmed that you're not overly pleased with how the Andrews government's handling things down here in Melbourne. What would you do differently if you had his job, and do you actually want his job?
I definitely don't want his job, that's for sure. No, look, I mean, Dan Andrews, you couldn't find a more difficult job, to be honest. I think, I feel really sorry for him. I think it's an incredibly big challenge for all leaders across the world right now. He's obviously got the harder point that he's now in a situation where he's got a state that's obviously performed worse than the rest of the states. But I think, if you look at the, New Zealand Prime Minister, I mean, she has just been simply incredible in my view. She's been strong, she's been positive, she's given a future vision and a direction. I think my biggest feedback for Dan Andrews, and I was being very well behaved, and I haven't said anything for weeks and weeks, and then I had a few reporters call me last week and I just couldn't help myself anymore, because I think the biggest issue for me is that, he came out and did a backflip on the construction industry had been talking through the unions to some lower levels of government, and there'd been feedback as to what the controls would be, that new construction would not start, existing construction has to continue, because obviously construction employs 400,000 people in Melbourne and is the lifeblood of our industry. It's something that if you do cut it off, it has a real effect. And more importantly, I mean, there's no evidence to suggest construction sites are creating real issues with clusters on sites. There's hardly been any compared to other industries. And, you know, our big builders are highly sophisticated, serious builders who know what they're doing. And my biggest angst around the whole thing is there was no consultation. So not once did Dan Andrews or his team pick up the phone to Multiplex or ProBuild or Hickory or the guys that employ all these major number of trades and a major number of people. There's just no consultation. And I think the one criticism I would have of the Labor government in Victoria is they don't have good connections to the business industry in Melbourne. Like, they don't have any relationships with big business, really. And it was pretty obvious to see that within 24 hours. Obviously, Josh Frydenberg got a lot of calls from business owners in Melbourne that he has strong relationships with, and you saw some action from the federal government putting pressure on Labor down here. And I think it's just unfortunate that Dan, through the good times, didn't develop relationships with business that he could then lean on to get insights into how we best manage this. And, you know, I think the thing that stressed me out more than anything last week was, you know, to come out on a Sunday, you know, we've been talking about stage 4 lockdowns for at least 4 to 6 weeks, right? So everyone with a brain would think for that 4 to 6 weeks, they're planning what stage 4 looks like. They'd be thinking about each sector, how do they keep as much of the economy going as possible? And he comes out on the Sunday and says, okay, this is what's going to happen for you at home with your personal life. And we don't really know yet on business. We're going to have to let you know tomorrow, right? I thought that was an extremely poor way to handle it. I mean, in times that are tough, leaders have to stand up, be strong, instill confidence, which I think is exactly what Ardern's done in New Zealand. And he came out and said, you know, we're going to lock you down. We don't really know what it means for your job or your business. We'll let you know tomorrow. He came out the next day with policy that totally flipped on its head within 24 hours. And then the next day was trying to catch up with what he said the day before. And, you know, the construction industry, you know, we're all very close in the construction industry. Everyone was on the phone very, very quickly. And it's a supportive group where he could have made 5 phone calls and discussed it, and people would have been able to go through the process. So, you know, the big builders, Multis, ProBuild, I think their preference was for a 2-week full lockdown, so full shutdown, don't do 25%. Some of the smaller builders wanted longer. It could have been worked through very well with the industry. Instead, it sent the industry into an absolute tailspin. And I can tell you, the anger and stress and anxiety that was there last week, I've never seen anything like it in my life. Like, it was full on last week.
How do you cope with all those feelings? Because, I mean, you'd be feeling it from your role with your responsibilities. Yeah,
look, it's hard. I mean, this has been a really big test. I mean, that first lockdown, I was watching Sam's interview you did with him last week, and obviously Sam's a great mate of mine and a great business leader. And, you know, all of us in that first 2 weeks lockdown, you asked him, you know, what could have you done better? And I look back to that first 3 or 4 weeks, and I was seriously stressed, right? I mean, like everyone, we had 3 buildings settling in the next month. I was terrified that my family would get it. I've got, you know, an elderly mum and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, there was an immense amount of stress. And I look back and think, could I have been a better leader? And I think people say, could have I been a better leader? But could employees and staff be better staff too, I guess, is the question. I think it's all of us have to say, this is an immense crisis. We need to stick together. We need to make sure businesses stay alive so we can continue to employ. And I think that's the most important thing. It's, you know, this is a virus that's affected every single business. I don't know a business or a friend of mine that owns a business that hasn't been affected, and such a unique time where everyone has to stand together. And I think going back to the political argument is, if politics and business aren't working together, then the economy cannot work, right? So it's, you know, I think that's the biggest concern, that we must work together.
Onto your business, I guess the issue around settlements becomes quite critical at the moment. Obviously, banks are still lending, and but, you know, investors aren't in the market, and people are very, very cautious. You know, are people settling? You know, do you think there's going to be any problems over the next couple of months with any of your projects?
So I had Albert Place settling 2 weeks after the first lockdown. I had Hawkeburn as well, and then we just did Spanish Club a month ago. And I'll tell you, I was more nervous than I've ever been in my career about settlements, because you've got banks starting to say we're not going to lend to hospitality, retail, even doctors, surgeons, you know, surgeons that have had their work cut. And we were incredibly nervous. For some bizarre reason, Albert Place, we had the best settlement rate we've ever had. We had 2 fallovers out of 142. Wow. And then at Hawkeburn, which is kind of a different product, 21 apartments averaging 5 mil, people had sold a house moving in. they all settle 2 days before their due date. So, and then Spanish Club, everyone settled in a day. So we've had incredible settlement results. I think we were fortunate in the sense that we were early in the piece. I thought we were really unlucky, but now I look back and think we were probably fortunate. I think getting valuations right now on big jobs is going to be hard. I mean, the good thing, at the moment, there's been no forced sales, right? There are no, a valuer can't point to any numbers to suggest that valuations have dropped. And we're seeing that in, the amazing data you get from REA and Domain, etc. And so far, prices aren't significantly dropping. And that will be, it's more about the valuation than the banks. I think that particularly for developers like myself who don't sell internationally, I mean, we only sell locally, and our buyers, if they still like the product, are trying to settle, right? So if you're doing a great product, feels good, it made sense day one, it still should make sense today. And even with the rentals, I mean, Nerida, you and I have talked about this a bit, that even if rents come back 10, 20, 30%, I don't think they are down to 20 or 30. I think they're more in that 5 to 15% range, depending on where you are. Interest rates have dropped 30 to 40% since those people bought 2.5 years ago. So yeah, your rent might not be 500, it might be 450, but your interest has dropped 30 to 40%, and your return's actually better today than what it was. So it's interesting. I mean, you'd think there has to be settlement issues. You would, but on the ground, no one's seeing it yet.
Tim, like you're stuck in Melbourne in lockdown, and you can't leave your house, and obviously all the hairdressers are closed. How are you maintaining that trademark hairdo of yours in this lockdown with 4 more weeks to go?
I haven't heard that one before. It's usually avocado related. But Zelman, I'm extremely lucky that the night before lockdown I got a haircut. Thank God, otherwise I'd be a mess. My wife would have to cut my hair.
Are you changing your designs since COVID, or you just...
No, I think it's really, I think it's really interesting. Like I find all the commentary, and Zelman, you know this better than anyone, people saying, oh, the city's dead, what are we going to do? It's never going to come back, we're going to knock the buildings over. I mean, God, we've been through world wars, we've been through the Spanish flu, been through the GFC. In 6, 8, 12 months time from when either a vaccine or we decide we have to live with this thing, it will all go back to normal. It's all going to come back to normal. The retailers are going to do well again. Landlords will get paid again, which would be nice. And it will all get back to normal. And in terms of apartment design, I get asked that all the time. I think if you needed a COVID virus to design good apartments, I think you've got a problem before you start. I mean, 1-bedroom apartments should have a study, right? They're small apartments, they need somewhere to live. 2 bedrooms need to be designed properly. We haven't changed anything in our design, and we won't be. I mean, we're just always trying to enhance it for our end user.
As Gurner evolved and their projects evolved to be bigger, we're now seeing with Victoria Vine and Collingwood, more of a mixed use program there and a lot more retail being introduced. How do you see the relationship of retail in these sorts of residential mixed use developments kind of being perfected and evolved within the Gurner portfolios?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the lifestyle element of what I was just talking about then is a lot to do with the retail. I think that the retail is paramount to the success of a project. I think there is nothing worse, and we haven't done it for a long time because I had to learn the hard way. We finished a job in West Melbourne called Ikebana, and we sold the retail there to a bloke, a guy for $8,000 a metre. Sold it the next day for $16,000 a metre to a guy in Shanghai who's left it empty ever since. And every time we sell through the same people all the time, and we're always in front of the same buyers. We've got some buyers that have bought in every one of our projects, but this one guy, every time I see him, he comes up to me and says, you still stuffed up that retail, it's still empty, and I'm furious with you. And we made the decision then that we will never ever do that again. So you'll notice that we contribute a huge amount to fit outs. So we have contributed almost all fit outs to most of our food and beverage tenants. We go and source them and bring them to the locations. But Zelman, I mean, you know better than anyone, retail's tough, right? It's not an easy place to be at the moment.
And what's your biggest fears at the moment that prevents you from falling asleep at night?
It's definitely the uncertainty. I mean, I think the one thing the government have not done well here, and I don't care whether it's Labor or Liberal, it's, they are giving, there is no aspirational future. Like there's nothing to hope for at the moment. And I think that's the biggest issue. We've got, what's the exit game, Dan? Like we've got another 4 weeks of lockdown. Great. But then what happens? We're not going to be at 0 cases. There's 0 chance. So are you going to wait till we get to 0 to open us up? Is it under 20? Is it under 40? You have to, even if you get it wrong, Donald Trump obviously is an absolute idiot in what he's doing, but at least he's giving a position, right? And people want to hear from their leaders what is happening. Tell us at the end of 4 weeks what's going to happen, and then in 6 months' time what's going to happen. And also, more importantly, I mean, we're talking about we've spent so much stimulus to date, but we're not even at the end of this thing, right?
Just finishing on a positive note, the biggest opportunity for you, I mean, what do you think that'll be in 2021?
Yeah, look, I'm actually really positive, to be honest. I think that the next 12 months is going to be hard for everyone. There's no question about that. We're very fortunate. We finished a couple of big jobs and we're cashed up in a good position to make the most of opportunities if they pop up. The only thing I'd say is there's a lot of people waiting for opportunities to pop up. So with all those people waiting, is it going to hold prices? It may just hold prices a bit higher than what we thought. I think I try to look beyond the noise and say, we've got to remember we're still one of the world's most livable cities. Population is going to pump, right? There's no question. As soon as we come out of this, forget about the 124,000 a year. Federal government Victoria will be growing at 150s, 160s, 170s. Australia will go back to that Rudd era of 450,000 people a year. Plus, when that happens, there's going to be an almighty growth in the economy. And there is an incredible amount of positivity and growth that will come out of this. And you know, all the best businesses have come out of crises, right? So we're looking at this as a massive opportunity to take what we've been growing over the last 10, 15 years and really take advantage and grow for the next cycle. And, you know, as we all know, although COVID probably put a bigger dent on it, we probably were at the top of a cycle anyway. I mean, asset prices have been running pretty hard for a long time, and it was probably right for there to be a bit of correction anyway. I think the big thing that people forget in resi is, you know, off the plan sales have been extremely hard since about September 2 years ago. So it's not like this is off the plan sales have currently just suddenly become difficult, right? It all happened when stamp duty exemptions got changed. That was the first hit. And then obviously the foreign restrictions and foreign stamp duty. And so people have got to remember that I've been saying for a long time, and everyone thinks I'm mad, that we're going to have a rental crisis. And I've been saying that for 18 months. We're seeing it. Obviously, students are leaving makes it falsely look like it's not a rental crisis. But in 2 years' time, when there is literally no buildings finished, there are no cranes in the sky, we're going to have vacancy under 1.5%, 1%, and it will be a rental crisis. And that is great for the property market because it will start to see things move again. So we're actually really optimistic, to be honest. I think it's, you know, people have got to be really careful in the next 12 months. People need to survive and, you know, don't spend too much when you shouldn't. And then I think it will be really, really positive. You know, Australia will look like one of the countries that have come out of this well. You know, I know obviously the last month for Victoria hasn't been that great, but let's not forget how incredible this city is. I mean, the reason we all live here is because we love it, and it's one of the best in the world, and that's why we're here, and we're not going to go anywhere.
Are there any suburbs that have not been discovered yet in inner Melbourne?
Yeah, it's a good question, and if I knew, I definitely wouldn't tell you. I mean, as you know, Zelman, Collingwood for me back in 2006 was that suburb. I mean, we were the only ones developing in Collingwood back then. Where's the next one? It's, you know, it's gone out. I mean, Northcote's already pretty bloody hectic. At the north's pretty cool. It's, you know, there's a lot happening already. And, you know, let's be honest, if I knew where it was, I probably wouldn't tell you. But how
about West Side, Footscray?
Yeah, look, Footscray's not somewhere we'll go. The reason why we're in Collingwood and Fitzroy is there's not many major sites. There's heritage everywhere, which really restricts supply, which is a really big thing. But your Footscrays and Brunswicks, which have got all those big old warehouses that don't have any heritage restrictions, where, you know, I can put up 500, you can put up 1,000 next door, someone else can put up 500, 300, 400. They're areas that we stay a long way away from.
Where do you get your inspiration from, and where overseas do you think they do it well?
Yeah, definitely New York. New York's by far my biggest inspiration. I think
Any projects in particular?
Definitely Greenwich and Meatpackers in particular. It's that's the spot I love the most. And I think as you mature as a developer and a designer and an architect or whatever you are, you start to bring it back to what you really truly believe in. I mean, I think in my early career, we were very heavily driven by the architects at the time. They came up with a vision. Now we are very, very, very much directing the vision based on something that we want to be proud of forever. And I think you would have seen in the last few years a bit of a change in tone in our projects. We're not doing big glass, shiny boxes in any way whatsoever. We're doing very authentic, legitimate designs that are meant to fit very much in their location. I mean, our designs now are kind of going the polar opposite of what a lot of other people do. Is we're trying to create buildings that look like they've been there for 100 years, which is actually a lot more difficult than a big glass shiny box. So, so that comes from that Greenwich meat packet area. I mean, Victorian Vine, as you know, Zelen, was an actual street in Greenwich that we wanted to replicate. So it's 9 buildings, a building of buildings, we call it. And when that completes, I want people that don't know it to drive past and go, wow, what an amazing warehouse conversion. Like, how does it all come together so well when it's been there for 100 years? That's really what we want to see. And that came probably from Spanish Club. I mean, interestingly, people talk about Ritz and some of our bigger jobs, but Spanish Club has been without doubt our most popular job, both social media wise, from a selling perspective, and then from a leasing perspective. That's a job that's only 34 apartments. It's tiny, but it had real heart and soul and everything that Melbourne's about. And we just finished that building, and we finished it on a week out of lockdown. I think you were only allowed to have, I think it was 10 people in an open home at that time. And we had 550 people lined up down the street of Johnson Street. And it took us about 4 hours to get through the inspections because we had to do it very, very slowly. We had police arrive. They thought we were opening a nightclub. And it just shows you that when there is that point of difference in authenticity, there is a huge market in Melbourne that is looking for better product. And that was a prime example of what we want to do in the future. And we will definitely build and hold a lot more apartments now. So we have a pretty large portfolio in Melbourne already, which will continue. And I think we do that also. It's just a sign of my confidence in the market. I just think, irrelevant of what's happening today, there's nowhere else in Australia that I would put ahead of Melbourne. Melbourne will always be our home and our main focus. It's the best city by a mile in my view, and the best fundamentals. And we've got to remember that. We can't let this 6 weeks distract us from this incredible place we all live.
Thank you, Tim. That was really interesting and really positive for the future, which is important at the moment. I think everyone wants to hear an end to this and a future, as you said. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you very, very much.